Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. We're happy that you're joining us today as we continue to talk about all things Catholic. My name is Father Daniele, and I am joined, as always, by Josh Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Not much.
Not much? Nothing new?
No, not now.
No, eh? And Matt Van Milligan over here. Matt, welcome to you.
Hello.
Yeah, nice to see you guys. It's good to have you back for our conversation because today we're talking about something actually that I think all three of us are.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about godparents, and all three of us are godparents, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's so important that we talk about this role because oftentimes, I think especially today, it's difficult maybe to choose the right godparent. People don't know what they're getting themselves into. And then as godparents, you know, you're so honored to be asked, and then you're like, oh, what do I really have to do?
What's going on here?
What's going on?
And
right?
I think we've taken it away because godparents was a thing, and especially in Canadian culture, I'm going to say, and even American culture, like a big chunk of Canadians were Catholic. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
over 50% were Catholic, and so being a godparent was a regular thing in regular life. But then it's kind of become this thing that, like, even if you're not Catholic, you have godparents somehow, and I mean, or not even Christian, you have godparents, and so. Let's bring it back to, okay, in the Catholic Church, what is a godparent? You know, like that's
right.
Let's talk about that conversation so you know what your responsibilities are. And then if you're a parent looking at asking godparents, what are their responsibilities and what are the restrictions? Because the church actually lays out pretty heavily
Sure.
what a godparent is.
There are lots of guidelines and criteria to be a godparent. So we're going to go through those today to help people who are choosing godparents. Or if people are a godparent and you're listening to us today and you're thinking, oh boy, am I living up to the promises I made at my godchild's baptism? And I say this because obviously I have the privilege of baptizing many children and adults as well. But also recently, you know, I had the experience of becoming a godfather again to little Luke, you know,
Yeah.
and Luke, of course, even though I'm giving him a shout out on the podcast, he doesn't hear or doesn't understand.
He'll
yet.
remember it in years.
He'll remember maybe, you know, when he looks back in 10 years, he'll be like, wow. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful to stand up there. It's beautiful to just know that you're accompanying someone on the journey. Hey, did you guys feel that way when you stood as godparents?
Oh, it's definitely an honor. Very much so. And that's, I think the very first thing, if someone was to ask me to be a godparent, I would be like, yes. Oh yeah. Okay. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Exactly.
Right? Because it's you know that it's an honor. You know that they're doing it. And I think people have a faint idea from, let's say, the media and movies we've watched or things that we might have an idea what a godparent kind of is, but not exactly understand the fullness of it.
We should have like classes for godparents and make them watch the Godfather series.
I mean, that would be interesting.
No, we won't do that. We want people to be good godparents. Yeah. So yeah, obviously it is, you know, it is an honor, but really I felt when I was standing there, you know, obviously I've been to a lot of baptisms because I presided at them. Yeah. But standing there as a godparent, you know, you listen to the words and you're saying like, you know, I'm taking on the spiritual responsibility of this young baby, you know, or it could be an adult too if you're standing in as a godparent. There's something special about it. There's something special about it. You know, I always tell godparents from this day forward, you should be praying for your godchildren every single day.
Yeah.
From this day forward, you know, you stood here, you said, I do, that yes, I'm gonna be a godparent for this child. The very minimum that we can do is to pray for them every single day. And I think that's special. Every day when I pray for my godchildren, you know, I think it's just a special, it keeps them in my mind. And
yeah, I was going to say that's kind of the part. If you're praying, it's a nightly prayer that me and my wife do for our godchildren. And in doing that, it does bring them to mind on a daily basis when you're praying. And I like what I do is I go around, I bless all my kids, and I pray over them before they go to bed, or when they're sleeping and I'm tucking them in, kind of thing. I just pray over all of them, and then I say the prayer for my godchildren. And when I'm praying for my godchildren, but it's bringing to light, first of all, my godchildren, who they are, and it's bringing to light of thinking about them, and that in that little 2 minutes at night is an investment in praying for them, like just bringing back to my relationship to them, even though they don't know it. You know, kind of a...
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about the responsibilities of godparents, and especially if you're involved in kind of Catholic community for a long time, like that's a good opportunity to, like, sometimes if we're kind of crammed for our intentions or our daily intentions when we do family prayers, like, and for our godchildren, and we're like, but like, you can't get away with that for too long. Like, okay, no, we need to pray for them by name.
Yeah. Let's think
remember
about
who they are, and
exactly.
bring them actively to mind.
Okay, so let's talk about how do you become a godparent? Like, what is the criteria? Because the church just doesn't allow anyone to become godfathers and godmothers. Because some right off the bat, some people have problem with this. They'll call the church and say, I want to get my child baptized. I already have godparents. Here's the date we want. And what's the cost? They say, no,
this is like
that's
paid
another
service.
thing too. Yes, if you're getting your child baptized and someone wants to charge you, which does happen. Actually, that's probably a topic for another podcast. But it has
should
happened.
not happen.
People apart from the church. I'm not talking about people in
yeah.
the church. But apart from the church, are running businesses that baptizing people and charging them money. It's so sad. If you're being charged for a baptism, you're in the wrong place.
A sacrament is free.
Sacraments are free.
Always free in the
Sacraments are
Catholic
free.
Church. You can't do that.
Okay, so godparents. So the number one, there's three criteria for a godparent.
Yeah.
You have to be at least 16 years of age.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at least 16 years of age to be a godparent. You have to, imagine, go figure, be baptized.
Yeah.
You have to be baptized yourself, right? And you have to be in good standing with the church.
What? So here's the question, because I mean those two things can raise some controversy with parents. Well, listen, I've already picked out people that aren't necessarily any of those things,
right?
Or I mean, hopefully they're over 16, but they're not Catholic, or they're not. Why does a godparent have to be Catholic and in good standing?
Yeah, so the simple answer that I give to people is you can't be a sponsor for someone in a religion that you're not part of.
Yeah,
right? That's
you're
the simple,
sponsoring them into the religion,
into
the
this
family.
faith. Yeah, and you're not part of that faith, So I know people pick two godparents.
Yeah.
You only need one. Only one is required. Okay, two is totally acceptable.
Yeah.
But if you're stuck for a godparent, only one is required. That one godparent has to be, remember I said baptized, has to be baptized and confirmed. Has to be baptized and confirmed. Okay.
Gotcha.
If there is a second godparent, that one only has to be baptized, or at least baptized. Right? So one has to be baptized and confirmed. That's hard for people because sometimes you have a cousin or a sibling or something that you want to be to be a godparent, but they've only been baptized.
Well, that's the thing.
They didn't complete their sacrament.
You want them to be godparent, but what is the difference here? So one of them, I mean, in the definition of the term godparent, what we're talking about is someone who sponsors your child into the faith and the life of the church and is making commitments that they're going to help you raise your kid Catholic. I mean, we'll get into some of that later on. So when people are saying they want them to be godparents, they're not having that idea in mind.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like
it's more of like, I want my best friends or my sister
to be honored,
to be, because obviously that's the most important person in my life right now. Yeah. And so I want to give them this honor of being the godparent of my child. Right. And so that's probably the first thing that goes on in most people's mind. And there's where we hit a problem, because when they call the church and say, I have these godparents already chosen, it's my sister or my cousin or my friend or whatever it might be. And then, we say, well, okay, that godparent has to track down proof of their baptism and confirmation, right? Yeah. And why confirmation? Because confirmation is the completion of the sacraments of initiation. Yeah. So someone is fully initiated into the Catholic Church upon receiving confirmation. Yeah. So obviously, again, going back to someone's fully initiated into the faith that they're going to sponsor someone through.
That's right.
Right?
They're a full member.
They're a full member. Yes. Now, it happens where someone is baptized in another Christian church that's not Catholic. Okay. Yeah. Can they be a godparent? Well, the church says that they can be a Christian witness. Okay. It's a technical term, I guess, we use for someone who's not baptized in the Catholic faith, but they have to be partnered with a Catholic sponsor who's baptized and confirmed. Yeah. Now, let's say you're not baptized. You're not baptized at all. No way. There's no partnering with someone or it's just you're not baptized. You can't be a godparent.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that's kind of where it comes into the faith. And you got to think about too, like you said, when you're saying the promises and stuff that we do when we go through baptism, and we'll hear that on another podcast coming up, I'm sure. But as we talk about baptism, it's your parents. Like normally, when we baptize a baby, it's the parents and the godparents that are committing to raising this child as in the faith.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then when we hit confirmation, it's the child who has been raised in the faith, hopefully, that is coming up and saying, I now take on the responsibility of my baptismal role, of my parents and my godparents have taken. I'm going to take those vows for myself and step into that role as well. Like to be that person that they've raised me to be in the faith. And so that's why they have to be confirmed, because they have now made the commitment. It's not their parents that made the commitment. It's they have actually made the commission to be in the Catholic Church.
Yes. And okay, now here's another. So we asked about why being baptized, right? So why does the church require someone to be in good standing? And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? Because if someone has, let's say someone is baptized and confirmed, but has totally, renounced their Catholic faith, well, they can't be part of the Catholic, they can't be part of being a godparent for someone. Let's say that they're under a penalty by the church, excommunication. I know we were talking about that for a future episode, excommunication. Let's say someone's excommunicated by the church. So that's another, that's someone who's not in good standing. Yeah. So someone who's not in good standing with the church, obviously,
they don't live or abide or uphold the faith. And so they can't be a sponsor into that faith.
Exactly.
So the same kind of idea.
Okay. So that's the criteria that's involved in having a godparent or choosing a godparent.
16.
Right? And it also can't be a parent. Cannot be a parent. Like it cannot be a parent of the child.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
They can't be a godparent. So what is the role of a godparent? Because, we're talking about being a good.
On that note, real quick.
Yeah.
Could a step parent fill that role?
Oh, that's
an interesting dilemma. Like, I'm just thinking, like, imagine if the mother would, like, I'm assuming, mother would like to baptize her child in the faith. Maybe the father's not in the picture, or whatever the case may be. The mother is the one sponsoring the child, but
that's right.
She's either married to the husband or, well, I guess she would have to be married to be in good standing and everything else. But then asking the stepfather to be the godfather. Potentially, I don't know. That would be an interesting.
It depends on the scenario, I would think.
Okay.
So, like in the case that the mother was widowed and remarried, or something like that, the stepfather would, I believe,
as long as they're naturally
fit the role of
parent
in that case.
Exactly.
But again, you could imagine a scenario probably where
I would probably pastorally suggest someone else, just because really the role of a godparent is to assist the parents. So if someone's going to take on that role of a
and
parent,
the fatherly
like
duty,
it's nice to have another more hands, I guess. Helping
it takes a village to raise a child, kind of thing.
Exactly, right? So in the sacrament of baptism, right, the parents are sitting there with the child, sometimes holding their child. So if the child's older, they're staying on their own, or if an adult, whatever it might be, they're answering for themselves. We're saying, do you promise from this day forward to take on the responsibilities to raise this child in the Catholic faith? Mm-hmm. So we're asking in the rite of baptism, it says to come to know God, to know His commandments, to be part of the Catholic faith. So basically, that's the question that parents are asked. Are you ready from this day forward to make sure that your child is being raised in the Catholic faith, part of the Catholic community, all those things? And they say, I do. We say, do you understand the responsibility that you are undertaking from this day forward? And they say, I do. Yeah. Then we turn to the godparents and we say, are you prepared to help the parents, these Christian parents, in the same role to fulfill that duty?
Yeah.
So godparents, I always say to godparents, sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to be awkward, where you have to step in and say, hey, you haven't been bringing, my godchild to mass, or you haven't been, have you been praying? Have we been learning about the scriptures? Have we learning about Jesus? Whatever it might be. It's awkward to have those conversations. It's awkward to have those confrontations.
That's why
that's the role of the godparent.
I agree 100%. That's why I never say yes to being a godparent unless I know the person's a real good Catholic, because then it kind of limits my role of what I have to do. I'm just kidding. I never have to worry about those awkward conversations.
You just put your feet up and
just
not
like, hey,
worry
there
about
we
it.
go. Yeah, that
I'm
kid's raised
praying for
Catholic.
them. That's
all I
enough
have
for
to
me.
do.
Yeah, exactly.
You're making that commitment then to helping the parents raise this child Catholic.
Yeah.
One of my friends used to say, like, when they asked us to be godparents, I asked them, what do you expect me to do as godparents? And he said, you have to be the person that they turn to when they can't come to me. You know what I mean? Like that. So that's how, like, I want you to be as close in my child's life. They were picking us, hopefully, because we had a good faith life and everything else, but they were picking us for that, but also to be close enough to my child so that they can turn to you when they have times of struggle. And maybe it's topics of conversation that they don't want to have with their parents, or they could turn to their godparent then and maybe have that conversation. I was like, oh, that was one of the best ways for me to understand my role on top of what the church says, how do I fit into this kid's life now that I'm a godparent?
So sometimes it's awkward, but sometimes it's awesome.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's like you can have a conversation with, if you have godchildren coming up into teenagers, then it's like, okay, just talk about faith and life, and just like without having to take on all the the disciplinary stuff of a parent. It's like no, we can just chat. We can just like we can talk about this stuff. And
it's so true.
I'm not going to send you to your room after. Yeah.
Because there is that aspect of it, of like you are another, godparents like to spoil their godchildren. You buy gifts for Christmas and their birthday. You're kind of at events if you can because of geography, right? You're part of the life of the person growing up. But exactly, it's about having those conversations about, being a good role model of faith, answering those questions that people might have about faith, and walking with them on the journey of faith. Walking with them to encounter Jesus in their life. The Catechism of the Catholic Church here says, because we talked about criteria. We talked about what godparents should do and what they're agreeing to. But here is really, it says the Catechism, what the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches. Godparents should be firm believers, able and ready to help the newly baptized, whether a child or adult, on the road of Christian life.
Yeah.
So godparents themselves should have a strong faith.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I preside at baptisms where, you've asked for proof of baptism, you've asked for proof of confirmation. So they've checked all
those
the boxes, and they're coming to a baptism. You can tell they're walking into the church for the very first time in such a long time.
I was going to say they're coming up to the altar to baptize the child with the coffee in their hand. like, you know what I mean? Like that. Hey, let's do this thing. All right.
Exactly. Right. So, and it's so when we're choosing godparents, we're looking for someone with strong faith.
Yes.
Someone who could be, like you said, you can go to them, as a spiritual mentor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real gift. I can think of the spiritual mentors in my life, not, they weren't they were other people outside of my godparents, but what a gift they were to me, and that's really godparents are a gift of being a spiritual mentor to people.
I was thinking too, like that, and that's what I think people, we mistaken in the media and in the real world, I guess, with godparents. They think that the honor there, we kind of misconstrue. The honor with that is being that spiritual mentor. First, being asked is to be that spiritual mentor, which obviously then the parents see something in you that means that you are a mentor, or that you are a person that they would really want in their child's life to raise them in that faith. But I think what a lot of times people only hear, or maybe that's the translation has only been heard, is that are you going to raise this child in the faith? And people take that to mean, if the parents die. Like, if the parents die, then you're asking me to take over.
Right.
And that kind of translates into that's what people think godparents are nowadays. Is like, can you be godparents? Because I can't think of anybody else I'd want to raise my child except for you, because you're my best friend. Like that's where I think the mistake kind of happens. Does that make sense? Because
absolutely.
But really, like the honor isn't necessarily because I want you to raise my child when I die. That has nothing to do with it. It's while I'm alive, I need your help to raise this child. And you are the person, you are a guiding light in your faith that I could, that's where the mentor comes in. That's where the honor comes in, I think, for more than anything. If you want that person to take over raising your child when you die, put that in your will, right? Like that's, and hopefully, I mean, and if you've asked a good godparent and everything else, then that's going to happen. But legally, that's in your will. That's not as a godparent.
That's right.
You
We
know
don't
what I
have
mean?
godparents sign that
No, that's-
before they say I do
That's
or
what I mean,
whatever
you know?
it might be. Yeah. And also a godparent should be, why a godparent should be a model of faith on top of these other, these reasons also is because most people today, children especially, don't get the fullness of the faith, right?
No.
They don't get it at school. They don't get it sometimes in their homes. So a godparent should be someone who defends the faith, teaches it properly, lets someone really grow into the life of faith. So that's why it's really important that you're choosing someone who practices their faith. It's so because think about the mind of a child.
Yeah.
You're like, that's my godfather or that's my godmother. And they don't go to church. My parents don't go to church. Yeah. What are they growing up to learn?
So what does faith really mean?
What does faith mean?
Yeah.
Something that we did at baptism, something that we might do at First Communion.
It's a cultural thing.
But not really something that's part of my day-to-day life. That's why a godparent should always manifest a proper way of living the faith. Right? Someone who loves Jesus.
So what happens if someone so now we've kind of defined the role of godparents. So even if you wanted to step into the role, if you're not, what if I was bringing my kid to you and I said, okay, I've got Bob and Betty. They're going to be awesome godparents. They're our neighbors. We've known them for 20 years. They're great. And then you say, are they Catholic? And I say, no, they're not Catholic. They're not confirmed. But they're the ones that are going to raise my kids when I die.
Right.
And you're like, sorry, you can't.
They could probably raise your kids when you die.
Yeah. but you're saying okay,
as far as being godparents,
they can't be that. You need to have somebody that's boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't have anybody like that.
Right.
What do I don't. I have no friends. Maybe I don't have family. I don't have. What do I do?
Yeah,
right.
It's a really good question because a lot of people face this, right?
Yeah.
Like with the sort of decline in the number of people who are practicing their faith.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, there's going to be a decline of people you can choose from in your life, right? So if most people are growing up just sort of culturally Catholic, some people don't have friends who are Catholic. Some people don't have siblings who are confirmed. Might be baptized.
Yeah.
They're not confirmed. Maybe there's no one in their life. Think about converts to the Catholic faith. Yeah. Maybe all their family is not Catholic or all their friends are not Catholic. So they come and say, I don't have anyone to be a sponsor. I don't have anyone to be a godparent. Like, I don't know anyone who's a Catholic in my life. It happens.
Yeah.
So what do we do? Well, it depends. If the situation, if it's someone, we can suggest a number of things pastorally for these people. If it's a young person, like if it's a child, and they're associated with one of our Catholic schools, maybe there's a good role model at the Catholic school. Maybe there's a teacher or someone that's involved in the school that would be a good role model for this child, right? And someone that the parents get along with.
Yeah.
Or right in our parish community. If they're coming to Mass, if they're part of our community, you get to know people. And people, how it is at Mass. Parishioners adore children.
Of course.
So if they get the opportunity to be a godparent for this child that's been coming to Mass, they'd be honored and they'd be living out that vocation to be that call to be a godparent with great love. If it's an adult, if it's an adult, different situation. We can't go to their teacher or whatever. We can go to someone in the parish.
Yeah.
Through our RCIA program, our candidates get to know a lot of people. I know, like Matt and his wife Teresa Marie. They teach RCIA in our parish, right? And our candidates come to love them. Yeah. They come to love Teresa Marie and come to love Matt.
And they get asked a lot of them.
They get asked, will you be my sponsor? Yeah. It's beautiful because there's this relationship of trust. There's a relationship of faith.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really where the beauty of being a godparent comes. It's that relationship of faith, right?
And it's okay. So there is a case, though, in the church where you don't have to have godparents present.
Right.
But I mean, that's in emergency situations or whatever the case may
right.
be.
So in an emergency situation, in the danger of death, so let's say a newborn baby is in danger of dying, there doesn't have to be a godparent there. There just has to be someone who will baptize. And that in an emergency situation, it can be anyone that can administer the sacrament of baptism. So you don't need a godparent there. So, but let's say there's a danger of death, and the child recovers. The sacrament should be completed back at the church later.
Yes,
and then a godparent should stand
in that place.
In that place.
So that's a provisional baptism. Is kind of it's baptizing in case
Yeah.
something
It's
happens.
a legit, valid baptism.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you want to complete it because in the case of emergency, you're going to use water only.
Yeah.
But when you bring the child to the church after, we'll use the chrism oil and we'll use all that stuff.
And do it right. If
And
you
a
will.
godparent will be
do
there
the whole
too.
sacrament.
Yeah. Some people ask also, like, because they ask, like, can my grandparents be my godparents? Sure, they can. And then they say, what happens when they pass away?
Yeah.
Can I choose
Other
a
godparents.
new godparent? And the answer is no. Like, your godparents, once they've passed, right? You can't choose new godparents, but hopefully they've left you with such a beautiful example of faith, right?
Yes, and what you were saying earlier about, like, one of the main roles of a godparent is that mentorship, or is that kind of direction and formation in the faith. That there I guess should be a number of surrogate godparents, or like people who you develop even after you come into faith, or people you develop that mentor relationship with, because that, like, even coming into Catholicism as an adult, I didn't, like, wasn't strict godparents. Like, I had a sponsor. I went through RCIA, and the person who sponsored me is great, like, is a great friend. But I would say that, like, there was someone else, or there is someone else who I would identify as my godparent in that situation. But they're in the Byzantine rite, which is funny, because like either no one told me or I didn't know at the time that's actually legitimate. That I could have asked them to be my godparent, but at the time I was asked to name someone. I didn't know enough about that, but also now my wife and I are godparents to children in the Byzantine rite, and it's like, but because those criteria are met, because we're in communion, so it's I don't know. All of these kind of criteria can seem a bit limiting, but it's actually, that there are a lot of possibilities. There are people who can fill these roles. There are people who can be these mentors that can, as peers, as mentors that, can, and there should be, within a parish community, people who are acting godparents when, parents godparents aren't available, or pass on, or move to another continent. That there are these situations.
And that brings up a really good point. So one of the things that you said in the Italian tradition, when we were talking about this before the show, in Italian tradition, a sponsor at confirmation is also considered a godparent. Yeah. Right? Because, you're doing the exact same thing. You're sponsoring. You're
standing for someone.
And so when we talk to people about being godparents, we always think baptism. I've never thought necessarily in my mind, I guess I never thought about being a sponsor at confirmation, but you are fulfilling that exact same role.
Exactly.
And you're being that mentor, and you're being that person that can help that person through that phase. So that's technically like...
And people ask, do I have to pick the same godparent for confirmation as I did on the day of my baptism, or that was chosen for me? You don't have to know. You can choose who you think will be a good spiritual mentor for you. But think about it. We're usually grade 7 is when people celebrate confirmation. Yeah. So at grade 7, who are you looking up to? Yeah. You're looking up to, like, maybe your older cousins or someone in your life that maybe, like, people your parents are friends with. You just, like, there's people in your life you just generally like. Yeah. And so those are the people you ask to be a sponsor. Yeah. But I know in our confirmation program, we're trying to, instill in our candidates, like, we need to choose someone who's actually going to help you on your spiritual journey. Exactly. Jesus sent people out 2 by 2, go and journey with each other. Like,
you're not on your own.
Help each other. Have these conversations. Life gets tough and messy sometimes. You need someone to talk about the spiritual things. You need someone to talk about, the things that matter in life. And that's why it's so important to choose someone that's grounded in faith. Yeah. That's really grounded in faith, grounded in the love of Jesus, because we all need someone like that in our life.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, and that may be one of the, or maybe a positive way of framing it is that it might be one of the benefits of having the baptism within the context of the Mass. I mean, for the last little while, we've had to have them outside the Mass, but that the godparents make the promise to support them. But when it happens in the Mass, often it's the entire community that affirms that they're witnessing this, and they're participating in the promise to support this person.
I think it says actually something in the catechism. The line that you read in the catechism, the next line down says something about that. It is the duty of basically the community to have that environment to share and have these child share and grow in their faith. You know?
Exactly. And that's very correct. You know, when we witness baptisms during Mass, the whole community gets behind. But we should be doing that even if we're not witnessing a baptism.
Yeah.
We should be looking at every child that walks into the church or is carried into the church, and we should be concerned with their spiritual well-being. We should encourage people to be good godparents in our Christian communities, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like we all need that support, and we need that encouragement. It's not easy to live the Catholic faith in today's culture, right? And so to have support from people to just encourage one another to keep going, to look at the beauty of our Catholic faith, to do it together.
I think the old saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," doesn't mean just to raise a child. It means even specifically in the faith, it takes a village to raise. That's why you need these other people, these other supports. As a parent, you need these other people that are going to support you in your vow. There's only very few times that we stand at the very front of the church and say, "I do." And if we take the baptism as seriously as we take all those other times, we say, "I do" at the front. What does that mean to us? How seriously is that we're taking?
Exactly. And I think that's something that's so important. You would never, where else would you, if you're in court or whatever, you give your word and you're under oath in court.
Yeah.
When you stand in front of the church and you say, "Yes, I am going to be a good spiritual role model, a good godparent for this child." I'm saying that in front of God. I'm saying that in front of the parents of this child. I'm saying that in front of in front of the child, in front of the priest or deacon, in front of the whole community sometimes, right? We need to be people of our word.
Exactly.
We can't leave that church and once the cake is cut, forget our role of being a good spiritual leader. Exactly. We so if you are a godparent at home and maybe you're like, "Wow, geez, I'm not such a great godparent," it's not too late. It's not too late to rekindle a relationship with your godchild, to start praying for them if you haven't been praying for them, to reach out to them if you've lost touch with your godchild, or godchildren if you've lost touch with your godparents. Reach out and have a conversation. Tell them you're praying for them. And if you're a parent with children or an adult coming into the church, think about godparents wisely.
Yeah.
Think about that choice wisely, because it's so important. It can make such a difference in the life of someone, in the faith life of someone, if you choose the right person.
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's all the time we got on this episode. I'll be praying for my godparents and my godchildren today as we talk about this topic. And I'm sure you guys will be doing the same.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions about what we've talked about or questions for a future episode, you can let us know at the Catholic Buzz Podcast at gmail.com, or you can comment right on our Facebook and Instagram pages as well. For Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on the Catholic Buzz.